Thank you, Wallace. That was a very nice introduction. I'm Pam V, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Pam.
And my sobriety date is July 1st, 2000. And we do go way back. I know you a long time. And what an honor to be asked to speak at an anniversary, 57 years. That is powerful. And he called me. I was working. He told me I was going to be a fill-in, like a week ahead of time. And then for his anniversary, I'll tell you what, I got so nervous. I'm like, as long as I don't have anything going on my calendar, I'd be honored to speak at your home group. Well, I was stressed out all week trying to think what I'm going to wear. Finally figured it out. Then I thought, oh my God, my hair's too long. Called my hairdresser, had an emergency haircut yesterday. All for you, Wallace. So I hope I look good. Anyway, it's an honor to be here, and I am also, I know this is a very structured Three Legacy home group, and I am also part of a Three Legacy home group, and we, from the primary purpose group in Wilson, and we meet on Monday night and Thursday night, and on Monday night, the first and third Monday night, we do a book study out of the big book. The second Monday, we actually started probably about a year or two ago where we do a step out of the 12 and 12. And that's been really exciting to get back into the 12 and 12. So we do that every week or once a month, whatever month it is, the step we do. Then the fourth Monday, we do a tradition. And whatever month it is, that's a tradition that we do. And if there's a fifth Monday, we do a history. So we want to remember our history so we don't repeat it, is what I was told. And I'll tell you, every time I get behind the podium, it's like God reminds me of who I don't want to be. I don't want to be her anymore, you know. So I guess there's a time when I've got to get behind the podium to be reminded of that. And then every Thursday, we have a speaker meeting. And we also have a babysitter. So for the past year, we couldn't have children, but the church has finally allowed us to have kids back. So that's really exciting, so people can come back. And we also have to social distance. We wear a mask. You know, we honor the church's rules. But we've been back in the church since October. And before that, we were doing Zoom only. And that's hard. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people are going through a lot of things. And I know that, you know, we think since we're isolated and it's just us that we're going through it ourselves, but so many people are going through things. And the more you go through stuff, my experience has been the closer I get to God. And then here's God's answer. I'm going through a really traumatic thing with work. I mean, it's just so stressful, but I'm grateful to have a job. There's people who don't have a job. So I'll pray really hard. God, you got to help me. God, help me. My phone rings. New sponsee. My phone rings. Another sponsee. I'm working with a lot of women. I'm doing 4 book studies a week. That's God's answer. Help somebody else, Pam, so I'm not thinking about my own problems. Isn't that awesome? And 2 of my sponsees are here that rode with me from Wilson. And in one of the other rooms, I have a sponsee here from Fayetteville. Aww. So that's pretty powerful that, you know, they want to be around me and they want what I have. There was a time in my sobriety I'll talk about. I think I had 4 years sober. Nobody wanted anything I had. I had no sponsees. I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, but today I have a sponsor. I have a home group. My sponsor has a sponsor. We have a Three Legacy home group. She believes in service work. There were many, many times, Wallace, when you and Tom I and Steve M, you guys would do tradition workshops in Raleigh, and my sponsor would drag me to everyone, and I hated the traditions, you know, because I couldn't understand them, so I had this fear about traditions. And she'd say, get in the car, you're going, you don't have a choice. And I thought, oh my gosh, first of all, we do a tradition a month for 1 hour, which is painful, that I have to sit and listen to, right? Now you're going to make me sit somewhere for 2 hours and listen to the traditions. And we would do that every year. Well, what happened as a result of that, I fell in love with the traditions. In fact, I would get my 12 and 12 out. I'd get so excited to have a notebook. Yay! Raleigh's having another big tradition workshop. I can't wait to go. I would just get excited. But that's how it works, you know. And I absolutely love service work. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not the same woman I was when I came into the room, into the fellowship. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'm from Hazleton, Pennsylvania originally, and we lived in the mountains, close to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, the Poconos, that area. My grandfather owned a bar, so before I could even walk, I was in the bar room. And everybody in my family, a big Polish family, everybody drinks except my mom and my aunt. So I was brought up around alcohol, drinking, smoking, cursing, playing pool, playing darts, playing gambling, blackjack, cards, stuff like that. And I was brought up around all that chaos, and I absolutely loved it. I couldn't wait to do it. I was like, yay, this is so exciting. I'd go over other kids' houses that their parents didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't gamble, and I thought, oh my gosh, you live such a boring life. My life's really exciting. But along with that came trauma. I'm one of 5 children. My mom and dad, there were 5 of us, and my Uncle Joey, my Aunt Lori, my cousin Eddie, everybody came over our house. So it was sort of like the Brady Bunch with all these extra people over all the time, but we were not the Brady Bunch. We were more like the Addams Family or the Munsters. We're pretty spooky. But the cops were always there. There was always something going on. Uncle Joe would come over drunk all the time, and my mom was an enabler. And I didn't know what an enabler was until I came in AA. But she would patch us up. My dad would be really drunk, and the next day she'd just fix everything. My Uncle Joe would come over, drunk out of his mind. I don't know how he got there. He'd wake up the next day on the couch. He'd say, where's my van? So he drove there, didn't even know. The bumpers hanging off. I would say, oh, have some coffee. We'll have the boys fix your van. She would clean everything up. And that's a caretaker. And I couldn't wait to have my first drink. I could not wait to join this excitement, even though I saw a lot of devastation through it. My father, for a little example, as a young kid, he put my mother in the hospital. It was one of those bad, bad nights. And for 3 days she was in the hospital. And then what we were taught when we were younger was, let's not talk about it. Let's forget about it. Just try to remember the good stuff. Let's not talk about the bad stuff that happened. If the cops were here, furniture smashed, this and that, let's not talk about it. So I always tried not to think about it. But I couldn't wait to drink. I had my first drink. I was 14 years old, 13 or 14, and you had to be 21 to drink in Pennsylvania, and we had a friend of ours get us alcohol. So he picked a gallon of blackberry brandy. That was my first drink. And we hid it in the woods. I went to school, and the whole day in class, all I could think of was, oh, I hope a hunter doesn't find it. I hope we hid it good enough in the woods that nobody steals it. All I could think about was that alcohol all day long. So we leave, get out of school, do our homework. We meet in the woods. We didn't have any ice. We had 2 cups and warm blackberry brandy, right? So we're drinking it, and here's what happened. And I'll never forget it because it was so exciting. I was a very loudmouth kid. I was chubby, a big mouth, gossiper. I didn't do good in school. I didn't like who I was. I had a sister. She was a year older than me. She was thin, blonde, pretty, and smart. Well, she used to study. I didn't. She used to exercise. I didn't. I'd have 2-3 bowls of cereal, extra thing of mashed potatoes. I like to eat. No wonder I was chubby. She would exercise. She would study. She'd do her homework. She treated her friends right. She didn't tell their secrets. I overate. I never exercised. And if you told me a secret, I couldn't wait till you left the room to tell her. I was so excited. I was like, oh, I have a scoop. I have news. Even though I said, oh, I won't tell anybody. I couldn't wait fast enough to tell somebody else. So I didn't have many friends because I had a big mouth. And here's what alcohol did. We started drinking. I lost 20 pounds. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I am thin. Let me have another drink. Oh, I am pretty. I am smart. All of a sudden, the fears and things that I thought about myself went away, and I felt so good about who I was. Now, my cousin, Ronnie, probably had as many issues as me, but he kept flexing muscles that I couldn't see. But he'd say, ooh, look at these muscles, I'm strong. And I'd say, Ronnie, let's have another drink. Let's toast to that, to your muscles that I couldn't see. Maybe I saw them later after a few more, I have no idea. But I don't remember how I got home. So I blacked out immediately, passed out in the bed. So I was a blackout drinker because I couldn't remember. And when I woke up the next morning, now back then they didn't have Velcro, but I was stuck to the pillow. And I was stuck to my own vomit. I had thrown up in the bed and slept in it. So I didn't get in any trouble. Just had to clean the sheets up. Got yelled at from my mom, but I really didn't get punished. And I could not wait to drink again. I never touched blackberry brandy after that. But I couldn't wait to feel pretty, confident, strong, intelligent, like I was just all that. And that's what alcohol did for me. And before that, I was always jealous of my sister. And I used to be mad at God. I'd say to God, when I pray as a little girl, I'd say, how come you put me in this body? It's not fair. You gave her the pretty body, and you gave me this body, And alcohol, well, after I started drinking, it was like, forget her. I'm prettier than her. I'm smart. Even though I'm coming home with F's and D's on my report card or a C, she's straight A's, right? I'm like, I am smart. They just don't know it. I got extremely confident and cocky. I drank all through high school. Then I moved to New Orleans when I graduated. And what happened was, like I said, everybody in the family drinks. Well, alcohol continued to progress in our lives. And I remember when I was in New Orleans, Louisiana, I got a phone call from my dad, and this was in 1980. And he said to me, Pam, you got to come home. Pamela, you need to come home. We're paying for a flight out for you to come home. Your sister was killed in a car accident. And what happened was she was at a party drinking, and 4 o'clock in the morning she left the party and hit a tree head on. So that was really devastating, tragic. But the thing that I didn't understand then, and I understand it now, I remember when that happened, and all we could think of, the family, we all got together for the wake and the funeral and everything, and all we did was drink. We drank, and we got trashed. And we blamed the people, the guy who had the party, that it was his fault. None of us saw, or nobody admitted, that it was alcohol that killed my sister. It was, why didn't you take her keys? We're going to sue you, it's your fault. And then I was mad at God. I blamed God, I blamed that guy, but I never blamed alcohol. I never looked at the truth because I never saw it. I was in some kind of a delusion. I continued to drink. I moved back to New Orleans. I lived there for a while. I moved to Texas. I moved around a lot, had a lot of fun. For me to stand up here and say I didn't enjoy drinking, I loved it. I loved going in the bars, especially when I was of age to get in the bar rooms. I loved all the drama. Well, a lot of gossip, lots to tell there. I loved the tinkling of the ice in the glasses. I loved picking out what I was going to wear, what band we were going to hear, what we were going to do, where we were going to go. And I absolutely loved it. And then I ended up moving back to Pennsylvania, and I met my first husband at a red light. Yeah. I know, right? I was drunk. Me and my friend were drunk, and him and his buddy were. Now, he's not an alcoholic, and I always like to say from the podium, he's a good guy. We're not married today, but I have 2 sons because of him. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know where my boys would be today. And I have 2 great boys. They're in their 30s today, and I've got a grandbaby. They're both in Florida now. But if it wasn't for him, because my alcohol progressed and progressed, I was a terrible mother. Now, I didn't want to be a terrible mother. I had these 2 little babies. I really wasn't sure what to do. I had this man who loved to eat, and he wanted me to cook, and I do not know how to cook. I cannot cook. And he wanted meatloaf on Monday, spaghetti on hunting day for, some kind of tradition. You have to have spaghetti and meatballs, pierogies on a Friday. And there was this list that I had to do. That stressed me out. So I had to drink more, trying to think about, I don't know how to be a mother to these babies. He's working, and I have this big food order, and I don't like grocery shopping, and I hate to cook. Well, here's what I did when I would cook, and they didn't have cell phones back then, but they had the wall phone with the long cord that you can walk around all over and chat, and I'd put everything on high. Hurry, 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 cook. Just blast it on high, and I'd be drinking, and I'd walk around on the phone, and everything would be burning. That's how I cook. And one day he wanted these spaghetti meatballs, and I'll just tell this little story. And he was a good guy. And I was in a hurry, and I was really drunk. And I thought, well, you're supposed to roll the meatballs and put them in the sauce and, simmer it and really let these meatballs cook. Well, I wanted to hurry, and I took this wooden spoon and I'm stirring the pot on the phone, drinking drunk. Well, all of a sudden the meatballs turned into meat sauce. So I don't know what happened. But he comes home from a full day of work. I'm drunk. Okay, he comes home like maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm drunk out of my mind. The kids are running around the house. And he looks in the pot and he said, all he said was, "What's this?" That's all. That's all he said. But here's what I heard. "What the heck is this? What did you do? You ruined my dinner. You don't know how to cook." I heard all this other stuff. But all he said was, "What's this?" I said, "You want your effing meatballs? I'll give you your meatballs." I took the pot, I opened the back door, I threw them all outside. I said, "There's your meatballs. I need a drink." I had a hard day. And that's what he would put up with. And he cleaned everything up. He was an enabler like my mother, and he put me to bed, and he cleaned me up. That went on. That marriage was like crazy. We were together 7 years. And one little other example I'll give you, we'd go to a wedding. And this was somebody in the family getting married, and I couldn't wait. Well, I had a drink before you get to the wedding to have a buzz, right? So we're at the wedding, and I'm drinking more, and I am really drunk, and an embarrassment. I was a civil drinker, so whatever mood I was in, that's how I would behave. Well, anyway, he's behaving, he's watching me, and all of a sudden my cousin Barbie walked over and started talking to him. She sat down, they just had a little conversation. Well, what I heard was he's in love with her and they're having an affair. That's what I saw and heard. And they're not, But I got crazy. I had this crazy thinking when I was drinking. And I said to him, "You're having an affair. I know you are." And of course, I made a spectacle out of the wedding on the bride and groom's day. I ruined their wedding. And screaming, and he had to take me out of there and take me home. And then that might have been the case, I'm not sure, but as he's driving, I jumped out of the car. And all I remember is telling everybody, he threw me out of the car. Can you believe he did that to me? And he wouldn't do that. He said, "I got crazy. I was on a rampage," and jumped out of the car while it was moving. So they're the things that I would do, and he would just clean up my mess. And he never knew when he worked, when he would come home from work, what kind of mood I was in. He never knew when he opened that door. Is it going to be a loving woman? Is she going to be in a good mood? Is she going to be drunk out of her mind? Is she going to be filled with lust, crazy that way? Is she going to be angry and mean? Is she going to tell me bad stuff? And he never knew. And that's the kind of woman I was. We eventually got divorced because the marriage, just didn't work out. My drinking got worse and worse. And what we tried to do was fill it with material things. You got this big hole inside of you. Well, if we get a new house, that'll save the marriage. It doesn't. We get a swimming pool, that'll help the marriage. If we buy a camper, that might help. I always thought, well, a new hairdo or new clothes, or if I lose weight, I'll be different. But that has nothing to do with anything. And I was brought up very materialistic, because my father always said to me as a little girl, he said, "What you have is who you are. So you better be driving a nice car, have a nice house, wear nice things, because that's who you are." And that's what he believed in. So I became very materialistic. And at the same time, I had a mother who would sit on the bed with the 5 kids, and she'd read stories out of the Bible and tell us about a loving God and just how wonderful God was. And as a little girl, I loved God. She'd read all these stories to us. And we were born and raised Catholic. And there were times she would sit there and we'd have to say the rosary together, all 5 of us. And I didn't know it then, but I knew it later. A lot of times when we sat there and said the rosaries, what we were doing was praying for my dad to come home happy. Because I was just like him. I would drink like him. That Sybil, person. He never knew if my dad was going to be in a good mood when he came home or if he was going to be in a bad mood and all the furniture was going to be smashed. And nights like that, she'd have us on the bed and we'd say the rosaries. And I didn't know back then that's what she was talking about. And I can remember years later I said to her, why didn't you just leave him? If he treated you that bad, because they were together 50-some years. And then he had passed away. And she said, who would take me with 5 children? They didn't even have welfare back then. Who's going to take me? Your grandfathers were drunks, right? All alcoholism in that home. I didn't want to go to those homes. Who's going to take me with 5 kids? So I'm going to stick the marriage out. And she did, So, let's see, I got divorced, and then I was off to the races. I became a bartender. And I thought, yay, this is the best job ever. I'm in a place I love to be. I'm getting paid for it. And I absolutely loved it. And I had a lot of fun. He would see the kids. He had partial custody. I had partial custody. And when I made a decision, I said, I'm not going to drink when I have the kids. Only on the weekends I don't. And the days that I have them, I won't. Well, being an alcoholic, it progresses, and we drink, and we drink, and we drink. So what happened, I'd be drinking around the kids, I was drinking around the clock, I was having a really good time. And I remember my dad called me again, and he said to me, Pamela, we're having a meeting at the house, you need to get here. And I thought, what's this on? See, we'd always have big meetings, like a big, gigantic family, and everybody was invited. When something was going on, we'd all have a voice. Sort of like a business meeting, right? And it was a family meeting. And we'd gather around the table, and I'm thinking, I wonder who's in trouble. My life is great. One of my brothers, who I can't wait to say something, I'm going to have a voice about that. So I get there, and all of a sudden, everybody's there, and here's what I hear. I can't tell you what it is, because some of it's fifth step stuff. They were talking about me. And they were telling how my behavior was, how I was dressed, how I was acting, how I was drinking and driving, some of the things that I was doing. And it was very, very embarrassing. Some of it I didn't remember because I'd be in a blackout. But I know I did something so bad people would talk about it that I would avoid that bar for a week or two, and just go to a different bar and hope they'd forget. Pop back a month later, like nothing happened. I would think people forget. But they're telling me all this stuff, and it was very, very embarrassing. And my mother, being the enabler, here's what she said. She said, we're going to help you because we don't want your ex-husband to take full custody of the kids. And we're going to help you. And she said, and I contacted Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a meeting scheduled at this Catholic church, and you're going to go, and your Aunt Lori's going to take you. And I never heard of AA. I didn't know I was an alcoholic. I didn't even think I had a problem. They were telling me I did. So I ended up going, and here's the neatest thing when I walked in. And I didn't think then, but I know today it is. Like when you see the old timers when you walk in, and whilst being here means a lot, you come to your home group, and that is powerful. You keep showing up, the people you're used to seeing all the time, Well, when I went there, it was me and my aunt, and I met Jersey Joe, Mike Kay, and Rachel from New York. And they were the old-timers. They had like 24 years, 18 years, 19 years. And they all welcomed me and my Aunt Lori. And then I had long, stringy blonde hair. I had 4-inch heels, super short skirts. Too much makeup, too much jewelry, too much me, and a big mouth. That's how I walked in, right? And I thought I was all that. And she said to me, Blondie, if you don't take the first drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, no wonder she's in this class for 18 years. She doesn't even know how to drink. Who gets drunk off the first drink? So I thought, I'm staying away from her. But what she did, she told me to get a big book and a 12 and 12, so I bought them. I ended up only going to 4 meetings. And I couldn't understand anything. I didn't want to be there. And the 4th meeting, I got so mad because it was on one day at a time. And they were going around the room talking about staying in 24 hours. And I couldn't even understand that. The steps and the traditions were like foreign to me. And here they're talking about living in today. Now, I'm a planner. On a Monday, I'm planning what I'm wearing Friday, where I'm going Friday. I'll hardly eat all week so I don't gain weight so I can drink all weekend. Who's driving? Is there a band? I have it all planned out. I'm the type that I used to, I don't anymore, I would go to get my fortune told. I had my tea leaves read. Who's the next man in my life? Is there a doctor out there for me? Am I going to go to Paris someday? What's happening, right? Trying to get all this information. So living in the day was very strange. And I never lived in the past because I either couldn't remember it or I didn't want to remember it. So I remember leaving that meeting. I said to my aunt, we're getting out of here. These people are crazy. And she said, oh, I wish I was an alcoholic. I really like them. I said, come on, let's go. So I had to have a meeting. I had to have a solution that my family would get off my back. And I remember I wrote it down. I was really confident this is what I'm going to do, and this will be fine. I'll quit bartending. I'll get a real job. I will go back to church, get close to God again, and I'll start working out and watching what I eat and exercise. That's a good list. And I thought I could do this, and I'll quit drinking. That was right on the top, right? So I presented them with it. Everybody's there, yeah, you could do it, Pam. Yay, we're so proud of you. I thought I could do it. I didn't know I was alcoholic. I didn't know I could quit on my own, that I couldn't quit on my own. 8 days later, I was drunk. 2 years later, my life spiraled out of control. It was worse than ever. I was thrown out of bars. I got in fights in bars over football. I don't even watch football. Right? People want to beat me up over, out of a dumpy bar, a bar that you wouldn't even take a glass if they even had one. You only drank out of bottles. And I got kicked out of bars like that. I did crazy stuff. I never got a DUI, but I got to tell this story. It was crazy. I'm with this guy, and he's driving, and we went out, and I always had 4-inch heels. Well, this time, I don't know why, but I grabbed flats, and flats are the heels real tiny, but I still have the super short skirt on, too much makeup, too much jewelry, all me, right? And we are having a blast. We're drinking, we're dancing, we're having fun. So when we're out till 2 in the morning till the bar closes, and the guy said, well, come on, we'll go out for breakfast. I said, okay. So we're driving for breakfast. All of a sudden, there's blue lights behind us. Now, he's drunk, I'm drunk. The cops pull up behind us, and immediately they handcuffed him. They talked to him, and they didn't have any blow machine or anything then. You had to walk a line and have your arms out and touch your nose or something. So they did that to him. They put him in handcuffs. They put him in the cruiser, and they looked at me, and I said, oh, I'm fine. I'll drive his truck home because I got to get home. And they said, we don't think so. Come on out. We're going to do a sobriety test. I said, okay. So I thought, well, I could do this. It looks like easy. And as I'm trying to do it, I'm walking, trying to touch my nose, and I'm stumbling, and I look down, and I started to scream. And the cops said, what's wrong with you? And I said, my heels. Somebody sawed them off in the bar. They cut them off. And I'm looking, I actually believe somebody had a saw and sawed them off. So anyway, they threw me in the back of the cruiser. They wouldn't let me drive. But I didn't get in trouble, and they took me home. But it was very embarrassing. How dare they? But, just stuff like that. But my bottom, and I'll tell you how bad I got with my kids. And this wasn't the worst thing, and it took years to say this behind the podium because I never would. I was always embarrassed and afraid. And one day I spoke out at, I think it was Willow Springs out there, and all of a sudden it came out. Just like when you prayed me up, thank you for your prayers, that meant a lot. And when you're prayed up, because you're filled with fear when you're behind the podium, and all of a sudden God will step in. And what happened then, all of a sudden the story comes out of my mouth that I would never ever say. And it was like, oh, I can't take it back, I'm going with the flow. And then I had people come up to me and thank me for that because it was so powerful for the mothers and the fathers, even though it was embarrassing to me. And here's what alcohol did to me. I wanted to be a good mom. I didn't plan to be a bad mother, but I couldn't help drinking. Drinking came before my kids, my job, my family, anything, because I needed to drink. And it was on a Wednesday night when I said I wasn't going to drink when I had the kids. Well, the progression happens, and here I'm drunk. And I put them to bed. It was 8:30, and I'm drinking, and I run out of alcohol. And I thought, okay, well, I need more. I can't go to bed without more. I have to have more. So I thought, well, if I looked in the room, they're 5 and 7 years old, they're both sound asleep. I thought if I just sneak down to the bar, it's 1 block away, and I'll get a 6-pack, I'll come home, everything will be good. Well, when you open the bar door, the jukebox is playing. Yay, there's Pam. I got a scoop. Oh, yeah, let me have a beer. I might need a shot to hear this, right? You're listening to the stuff. You're having a good time. Have a dance. Have another shot. I forgot about my kids. Well, my 7-year-old woke up in the middle of the night, and here's what he did. With his little feet pajamas, he walked to the bar. He knew where I was. That's pretty sad. And he walked in the bar, and I was so drunk. I mean, I think I was like passed out at the bar. My head was down, and he kept pulling on me, and I looked down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And he's crying. He's there, Mommy, Mommy, come home. And I said, how dare you embarrass me in front of my friends? It was all about me and all about alcohol. And then when he got home, I gave him a licking. And I continued to drink. That was not my bottom. But that's where alcohol took me. So I needed to say that, and I know there's mothers and fathers here that drove with their kids in the car or did stuff with their kids that they would never intentionally do to harm them in any way. But alcohol is so powerful. My bottom was just one day I woke up, I looked in the mirror, and I started crying, and I thought, who are you? I don't pray anymore, and I love God. I've always loved God as a little girl, and I believed in God. But I was so ashamed of the things that I was doing, I was too embarrassed to talk to God. Even though God knew, but I thought if I just hide from him, he won't know. I couldn't hold a job. I didn't have a boyfriend because all guys would break up with me or I'd break up with them because you weren't doing what I wanted you to do. Just stuff like that. I had to be in control all the time. I hardly had any friends because the minute you told me something, I told somebody else. I was like the big gossip, big mouth, drunk. My kids wanted to be with their dad more than me. My family, who's filled with alcoholics, didn't even want me around because if there was a party, they had to get a babysitter for me because they didn't know how bad I was going to get. Who's going to watch Pam? That's pretty sad. So I remember I pulled out the drawer. I found the 12 and 12 that was sitting in the drawer for 2 years. And I read step 1. I didn't understand it, but there was enough power in that reading that I ended up going to a meeting. And this was in Pennsylvania, and here's what I'm talking about, the old-timers showing up and the people who keep showing up, the familiar faces. 2 years later, I'm scared to death now. I didn't call my family. I didn't tell anybody. I thought, I'm going to go back to AA. I need help. I walked back in that same church. Now, I don't know if they remembered me, and it didn't matter. But when I opened that door, there's Jersey Joe. There's that crazy Rachel, right, from New York. Ooh, I'm glad she's here. That's a familiar face for me. Hey, there's John Kay. And it made me feel that I wasn't alone or as scared because there was familiarity. I was taught from my sponsor, show up at a meeting, show up early, stay late. And when that newcomer walks in that door, greet them with a smile. Welcome them because they're scared to death. We need to be here. I need to be in a meeting for myself, too. But I also need to be there for the newcomer. Show them where the coffee is. Show them where the pamphlets are. Give them my number. Women only, no man. For me. That's how I was taught. But anyway, so that was very comforting. Now, this was in 1996, and I said my sobriety date was July 1st, 2000. So this is what not to do. I ended up joining Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a sponsor in name only. She was a wonderful woman. She wanted to take me through the steps. She was willing to help me, but I didn't care. She said to me, I'll take you through the steps, and here are some of the suggestions. Don't quit your job, because she didn't want me focusing on something new. And plus, my job's paying my bills. I wasn't around alcohol. Don't move, because that's a big change, disruption, because she wants me to focus on the steps, right? And don't get in a relationship. Well, that was it. For how long? A year. Well, you got to be out of your mind. I can't not date for a year. She was married. That's a different story for her, right? So I had a resentment right away on her. So I never called her. I ended up at this Cunningham meeting in the Valley, right? And there's this guy, oh my gosh, he's chairing a meeting. And I thought, wow, he must be the CEO of AA. He's chairing a meeting. He has a key to the church. He's in charge. And good looking, right? So I had my eyes on him, just kept following him around. 4 months later, okay, you don't know anything 4 months, right? I'm on my best behavior if you date me at least the first 6 months till you get to know me, right? I mean, that's how we are. So 4 months later, I called my sponsor, who I never call, and I said, I quit my job, I got married, and I'm moving to North Carolina. She said, good luck. So off we got the U-Haul, the kids, we moved to Goldsboro, North Carolina, and I did the same thing. I got a sponsor in name only. I never called, or just occasionally. I didn't join a home group. It was some kind of clubhouse that had all these different days. I went when I felt like it. I did everything I felt like I wanted to do. Now, I didn't drink, but I was doing everything I wanted to do. I didn't know that I had character defects because I never did any steps. So I'm this character defect, roaring with character defects, sober, just crazy. And I marry this man, like I said, you don't know anything about him, 4 months. I come home from work one day. I had a part-time job as a dog groomer. I came home from work one day, and this is payback from my first husband. Remember how he'd come home, he never knew what was going to be behind that door? Well, that happened to me. I opened the door, I walked in, and my husband said to me, I'm quitting AA. I'm going to drink. I'm not really an alcoholic. I said, well, I met you in AA. What do you mean you're not an alcoholic? He said, well, actually, I was a drug dealer, but I don't drink. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even do drugs, and I married a dealer. That was scary, right? I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to say anything about him, but you know how it goes. It got so bad, the kids moved back to Pennsylvania. One day I walked home, came home, the music's blasting, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he's drunk out of his mind, half my living room furniture's gone. He told me when we got married he was an entrepreneur. And that means he sold stuff on eBay and in flea markets. So I come home from work, and all of a sudden there's this pool table in the middle of the living room. And they have the big fluorescent lights and the Budweiser horses. And you put quarters in it, right? And he's shooting pool, drunk, blasting music. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, yeah, babe, didn't I tell you? I'm a pool shark. I'm like, who are you? So it just spiraled out of control. I ended up in Walmart parking lot crying. Oh, no, before then, here's what happened. We're at like a halfway point. You know, it says you can't, we're either going to conform and move forward and change. By practicing the steps, we change. We become new men and new women. Our thinking changes. We have these spiritual principles in our life. We're living our life different because we're cleaning up the past. We're making amends. We're doing all this stuff. Well, I'm doing none of it. Okay? Absolutely nothing. And I'm at that point where I'm not moving forward at all. Where am I going to go but back? So I ended up drinking. I thought about it, bought a dress. I mean, it was crazy. I thought it was going to be a great thing, you know. And I ended up getting drunk. I threw up for 3 days. I was sick. It was terrible. And I can remember my husband standing over me, looking at me with a beer, saying, boy, you can't drink. You're an alcoholic. And I was so mad. I was angry. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I wanted to drink, but I couldn't drink, and I knew I couldn't. What am I going to do? So I ended up in Walmart parking lot, sitting there crying, my eyes out. And I asked God. You know, people say those strong words, God help me. And I did that. I did that in the car, alone, crying. And here's what I heard, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know it was God because I would never have thought that. Because to me, AA didn't work. There's nothing in AA for me. I found this drunk, who's a liar anyway, husband. AA was no good for me. And it was Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I ended up going back to AA. And if anybody is new, don't give up on Alcoholics Anonymous. There is power in the steps. And what happened was I came back. Yes, I came back lying because I wanted to come back. I didn't want to pick up a white chip and be embarrassed because remember, I'm filled with me. It's all about me. I wanted to be popular because I'm self-centered. I didn't know I was all that. But that's how I came back. And I'm like, oh, Pam, I have 4 years. How are you? Yeah, I got 4 years. How you doing? I'm going to do this thing. And I asked Sandy to sponsor me. Now, here's how God works. The steps work. She took me through the steps. My life started to change. Even though I had that lie, God will still work with you. Because all of a sudden, that's going to change. There'll be a time and a place where it changes. And I'm going to meetings. I show up early. I give out my number to the women. I'm still married. He's drunk home all the time. But I'm focused on whatever she tells me to do, I'm going to do. She gets me involved in service work at the prisons. I'm doing all this stuff. I speak places. And then one day, what happens? I ended up speaking in Raleigh. Sarah. A lot of you know her. An Alcoholics Anonymous, very strong woman in AA. And she picked me up for the meeting, filled with a van filled with men. And I thought, ooh, that's not good. If Jim finds out, he's real jealous and controlling. I said, Sarah, just tell Jim if he asks that it was all women. I'm going to lie to him, but it's a good lie. It's a good lie. It'll get me out of trouble. She looks at me, she goes, I will not lie for you. I said, this is a good lie. I could be in a lot of trouble here, right? She said, you need to talk to your sponsor. Well, I was really mad. Now, here I'm going to be the speaker. They probably prayed me up, but it didn't work because I got behind the podium with the resentment. That's not a good thing. When we stand behind the podium, we tell what we were like, what happened, and what we're like today, and our experience, and how we meet God, how God's in our life, and how our life has changed. We should be giving hope to somebody. I'm behind the podium mad. It's all about me, and it was the worst talk I ever gave. I remember saying at the end of the meeting, I walked up to Sandy and I said, Sandy, Sarah won't lie for me, and this is ridiculous. Tell her she needs to lie for me. And she looked at me and she said to me, Pam, if you want God to dwell in you, and she knew I wanted that more than anything, then you have to get honest. I didn't know how to be honest. Even though I was doing all the right stuff, I had that lie. So it took a little bit, I slept on it. And I'll tell you, when God's talking to you, it's almost like a volcano. He wakes you up, and it's almost like you want to throw it up. And it's like, oh, no. Because here's why. If I tell people, they're going to say, Pam's a liar. She lied to us. They'll probably take my key away. I was secretary at the time. They'll fire me because it's all about me. I'm thinking about myself. They'll talk about me. I lied for 10 months. But then I was willing to do it. So I told him the truth. I got through that. I ended up telling my sponsor the truth. That's where my life changed. She was so excited. She got the big book out, and she quoted from the big book, it's time to clean up your side of the street, the mess you made. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? She said, well, step 9. I said, yes, I'm not there. Why? She said, yeah, let's get a pen and paper. How many places did you speak? How many groups? We have to go to every one. And you have to make an amend to groups. I know, right? Not one-on-one. My first amends were groups. But here's the key. She said, we. I didn't do it alone. I did it with her. Thank God. I hung on to her coattails, and guess what? 20 years later, I am still hanging on to her coattails. It doesn't get easier. Life still visits. It gets hard, but it's worth it. God put so many women in my life. I ended up going through that divorce. I ended up leaving him because I'm going on this narrow path that gets harder and harder and harder, but it's such a wonderful path. I wouldn't want to miss it. Don't miss it. And he was on a wide path that I no longer wanted to be on. And the narrow path gets rid of the ego. Looks at the character defects. Ooh, I'm materialistic. Ooh, I'm bossy. Ooh. I'm all this stuff. I didn't know it until I did a 4th and a 5th step. Making amends. But I'm almost out of time, but I just want to say, especially if you're new, don't do it alone. Sponsor is very, very important. Get a sponsor who enjoys sobriety, has a home group, practices the steps, the traditions. 3 Legacy, join a very strong group, and service work. It's all about helping others. The more I cry out to God, the more my phone rings and somebody needs help. That's how it always is. I'm like, oh, what about me, God? Okay. Focus on them. So I'm not as jammed up about work because I hardly think about it with all the stuff going on. It's so good. But anyway, thank you again, Wallace, and congratulations. 57 years is amazing. God love you, and thank you very much.